The man who saw the threat and changed history. June 25, 1942, Los Angeles, California. On a hot June day in Los Angeles, when the sun baked the streets like red-hot iron, a quiet man named James Hall rode his old bicycle through the narrow lanes of West Side. James was 38, tall, with gray eyes, and a face that looked older than his years. He'd worked for 8 years at the Santa Monica Printing Company, delivering orders, running errands, sometimes helping with paperwork. No one thought much of him. He was just one of those steady, unassuming people who went about their lives without fanfare. But today, everything changed. As he pedaled toward the office, he noticed something odd. Near a trolley stop, a black car sat with its windows down. A man in a gray overcoat stepped out, carrying a small bag. He glanced around quickly, as if checking no one was watching, then walked to a mailbox on the corner. James didn't think much of it until the man placed not a letter, but something else inside. It was a small, thick book, about the size of a notebook, with a hard black leather cover. No title, just a small metal star emblem. As James passed by, his foot accidentally nudged it. The book fell from the mailbox onto the pavement. He stopped. At first, he thought it was just lost property, but when he picked it up, he felt something strange. The book was heavy, cold as metal. The cover didn't bend or creak. It felt like it was made of something unusual. He tried to put it back in the box, but then he heard footsteps. "Hey, what are you doing?" said the man in the coat, already approaching. James quickly tucked the book behind his back. He didn't know what to say. The man seemed calm, but there was tension in his eyes, like someone who didn't want to be seen with this object. "I just found it," James said, trying to keep his voice steady. "Did you drop it?" "Yes," he replied, reaching for it. "Give it here, please." James handed it over. The man took it quickly, thanked him, and disappeared toward his car. James continued to the print shop, but he couldn't shake the feeling. What was that? Why did the man seem so nervous? And why did the book feel so wrong?
That same day, during lunch, he accidentally dropped it on his desk. When he picked it up again, the cover slightly opened. He couldn't help himself. He peeked inside. There were no pages, only one sheet, a blueprint, extremely detailed. It showed maps of California's coastline, road networks, military installations, airports, radio stations, and right in the center, a date, July 10th, 1942. Below it, Commando Special Operations, German Admiralty. James froze. This wasn't just a plan. This was a detailed blueprint for a massive invasion of the U.S. West Coast through California. The goal: seize Los Angeles, then San Francisco, and push inland using submarines, airships, and forged documents to create chaos, all within 2 weeks. And it was signed by an officer James had never met, but whose name he recognized: Captain Heinrich von Steiner, commander of Operation Northern Cross. James didn't know what to do. He wasn't an agent. He wasn't in the army. He was just a delivery boy. But he knew if this plan got into enemy hands, or if it began, millions could die. Possibly all of America would be plunged into a war it wasn't ready for. He couldn't go to the police, not knowing whom to trust. They might think he was lying, or worse, accuse him of being a spy. So he decided to act himself. That evening, in his modest apartment on Fulton Street, James sat at his table thinking. He wasn't brave, he wasn't fearless, he just wanted peace. He wrote, not a letter, but a note, short, clear, describing exactly what he saw, where, when, and what was in the book. Then he went to the nearest FBI office. It was risky. He could be arrested as a spy if they thought he'd faked it, but he had no choice. He approached the duty officer, handed over the note, and said, "I'm reporting a serious threat to national security. I have evidence. I'm not a spy. I'm just a man who saw something he shouldn't have." The officer looked at him skeptically, but called in a supervisor. An hour later, James sat in an office with 2 agents, one in uniform, one in civilian clothes. "We can't verify your information until we have proof," said the civilian agent. "Are you sure this is real?" "I don't know, but I saw it with my own eyes, and I can't ignore it." They took his description, a photo he'd taken with his old camera, and promised to investigate. 3 days passed. He heard nothing. He grew anxious. What if they didn't believe him? What if the operation had already begun? But on the 4th day, he was called back. This time, 5 men waited for him, including a captain from military intelligence and an officer from the OSS, what would later become the CIA. "We've checked your information. You're right. This is real. The plan was prepared in Germany, transmitted through neutral channels to Mexico, then to Los Angeles. Your book is a copy of the original, which we destroyed, but we found the master copy in Washington. The details match exactly." James was stunned. He couldn't believe his ears. "You've saved America," said the OSS officer. "If this plan had gone forward, we would have lost thousands of lives, possibly the entire West Coast. This would have been one of the largest operations in wartime history." James lowered his head. He didn't feel like a hero. He felt tired. He hadn't wanted this. He just wanted to live quietly, like everyone else. "You'll be honored," the captain said. "We can't speak of this publicly, but your contribution will be recorded." "I don't want honors," James said. "I just want people to know that an ordinary man can change history, not for glory, for peace." They agreed. His name remained secret. No newspapers, no films. He returned to his job as a delivery boy. But deep inside, he knew he had become part of history. Los Angeles, July 10th, 1942. The day Operation Northern Cross was scheduled to begin. The city buzzed with unease. No one knew why, just a sense that something was off. Military patrols increased around airfields, ports, and radio stations. People looked at each other with suspicion. Some said it was just drills. Others whispered it was the start of something bigger. James Hall, now working in a special security unit, watched it all from the sidelines. He didn't know every detail, but he knew his information had helped prevent the attack. He received orders: monitor suspicious individuals, especially those in European clothing or with unusual documents. He was the only one who remembered what Captain von Steiner looked like. He remembered his face, his voice, even the smell, tobacco and soap. Around noon, James spotted the man in the gray overcoat stepping out of a cafe on Olympic Boulevard. It was him. Without hesitation, James followed. The man walked slowly, as if unsure where to go. He stopped by a fountain, pulled out a small notebook, identical to the one James had found. But this time, he didn't open it. He just stared at it, as if praying. James moved closer. He didn't want to draw attention, so he stayed at a distance, observing. Minutes later, the man suddenly pulled a pistol from his pocket and pointed it upward, into the sky. Not firing, just holding it. James understood. It was a signal, a trigger for hidden agents. Quickly, he reached for his radio, an old device given to him by the agency. He turned it on, entered the code, and sent the message. Suspicious agent on Olympic Boulevard, gray coat, pistol, acting, immediate intervention required. Within 3 minutes, 2 agents in plain clothes arrived. They surrounded the man. He didn't resist. He just looked at them with a cold expression. "Are you surrendering?" asked one agent. "I was following orders," he said. "I didn't know the plan had been foiled. I thought it was beginning." "Were you part of Operation Northern Cross?" asked the other. "Yes, I am Captain von Steiner. I was sent to coordinate the initial actions. I didn't know you already knew about the plan." The agents contacted headquarters. 10 minutes later, a military vehicle arrived. The man was taken away. James stood nearby, trembling. He didn't know how to feel. Relief, joy, or fear. He knew this wasn't the end. The plan was stopped, but other agents, other plans still existed. And James Hall remained at the center of it all.
Washington, D.C., August 20th, 1942. After saving Los Angeles, James was summoned to Washington. He hadn't expected it. He thought his work was done. But the government wanted to use his experience, not as an agent, but as a trusted source who could help develop new security methods. He was brought to a secret facility known as Sector 7, a place where the nation's top minds in security gathered. There, he met not officers, but scientists, engineers, psychologists. "We want to understand how you recognize the threat," said Dr. Edward Richardson, chief analyst. "You weren't trained. You had no access to intelligence, but you acted. Why?" James shrugged. "I just noticed something odd. A man who shouldn't have been there, a document that shouldn't exist. I didn't think it was important, but I felt, deep down, it was." "And that's the key," Dr. Richardson said. "Intuition, true instinct. We call it the Hall effect. We want to learn from it." They studied his behavior, how he made decisions, how he handled stress, how he analyzed situations. They tested him with various scenarios, and he always found solutions others missed. One experiment showed him footage of people walking down a street. One was assigned to act like a spy. James immediately identified him. "Why?" they asked. "He doesn't look at people. He looks at cameras. He constantly checks angles. He moves unnaturally. He's too calm." "You're right," Dr. Richardson said. "He was an agent. We didn't even know he was here." James didn't understand why this mattered. He just did what he always did, observed. His work in Sector 7 led to something greater. They developed an early warning system based on his methods. They called it Hall's Eye, a system that analyzed human behavior in public spaces, detected anomalies, and alerted authorities to potential threats. It was used in several operations, including preventing a bombing in New York City in October 1942. In a crowded subway, the system flagged a man holding a bag, but not looking at it. He sat motionless, as if waiting for a signal. Security approached, and inside the bag, was explosive material. James was invited to meet President Roosevelt. He didn't know what to expect.
The White House, November 15th, 1942. James Hall stood in a long corridor, trembling. He'd never been in the White House. He never imagined he'd be invited there. He was just an ordinary man, and now he stood at the heart of power. He was led into Roosevelt's office. The president sat behind a large desk, wearing glasses, pipe in hand. He smiled. "James," he said, "thank you. You didn't just save Los Angeles, you saved America." James bowed his head. "I just did what I had to do. I'm not a hero." "Heroes are those who do what must be done," Roosevelt said. "Even if no one knows, you are a hero, and we cannot let your contribution go unnoticed." He presented James with a silver medal for exceptional contribution to national security. It bore an eagle and a star. James didn't know what to do with it. He just wanted to go home. But Roosevelt continued, "We want you to become the face of a new initiative. We're calling it Project One. It's a program to train ordinary citizens, not soldiers, not agents, but everyday people to recognize threats, to act, to stay calm." "I can't teach," James said. "I'm not a teacher." "You can," Roosevelt said. "You've already taught us. Now you'll teach others." James agreed. He began writing manuals, giving seminars, speaking to groups across the country. He taught people to pay attention to small things, the glance, the movement, the behavior. He became a symbol, not of strength, but of awareness, not of bravery, but of presence. Los Angeles, June 10th, 1945. During celebrations marking victory in Europe, James Hall stood on the roof of his house, looking at the city. He didn't celebrate. He just watched. He knew the war wasn't over. But he also knew, because of his actions, America hadn't lost the West Coast. There were no mass bombings, no cities seized. He never received fame. His name wasn't written in books. But he knew he'd done the right thing. Later, in the 1960s, as an old man, he wrote a book, The Ordinary Man and the Great War. In it, he told his story not as a hero, but as a man who noticed something strange and chose not to stay silent. Only 500 copies were printed. It never became a bestseller. But some people read it, and some began to wonder. Maybe they too could make a difference. James died in 1978. He was buried in a small cemetery in Los Angeles. On his grave, a simple stone with the words, James Hall. He was not a hero. He was the one who noticed. And today, 80 years later, his story remains unknown to most. But for those who know, he is a reminder that even the most ordinary person can change the course of history. Los Angeles, June 10th, 2025. The sun set over the horizon, painting the sky in soft orange and pink hues. On Olympic Boulevard, the very spot where James Hall spotted Agent von Steiner, life bustled as usual. People strolled, laughed, took photos against historic buildings. No one knew that 83 years ago, in this exact place, an event occurred that altered the course of history. But on June 10, 2025, for the first time in decades, this neighborhood became the focus of attention. Not because of anything new, but because James Hall's story, finally, was revealed to the world. It began with a young historian named Maria Garcia, who, while researching FBI archives, stumbled upon a document meant to vanish. It was a report on Sector 7, the secret center where James Hall worked from 1942 to 1945. The report stated the Hall effect, unique combination of observation, intuition, and action under uncertainty. His methods, based on behavioral analysis, formed the foundation for modern early warning systems. Maria spent 2 years searching. She studied archives, corresponded with former FBI agents, collected testimonies. Finally, in 2024, she found the last living person who knew James Hall personally, Margaret Lynch, his former neighbor on Fulton Street. "She was so ordinary," she said, sitting in her cozy home. "No one suspected he was the key to saving the city. He always said, in this world, nothing is invisible if you're willing to look. And even if you don't know what to look for, sometimes your heart tells you something's wrong." Maria gathered everything: archives, memories, even a copy of James' book preserved in a university archive. She created a documentary film, The Eye That Sees. Released on June 10, 2025, the film featured archival footage, interviews with historians, reconstructions of 1942 events. Most importantly, it marked the first time in 83 years that James Hall's name appeared on screens worldwide. What happened next? When the film premiered, the world seemed to pause. In the first 24 hours, it garnered 50 million views. People who'd never heard of James Hall began discussing his story. "I can't believe this is true," wrote a woman from Michigan. "A delivery boy saved a country? But if it's true, we should learn from him. My grandfather used to say, delivery boys in Los Angeles were the most important people. Now I understand what he meant." Most importantly, scientific communities began re-examining security methods. The Hall's eye system, developed in the 1940s, was once again studied. "This isn't just a story," said Dr. Aaron Levin, a cognitive psychologist at Harvard. "It's a method showing how vital it is to pay attention to small things, not just in war, but in everyday life." In 2025, to mark the 83rd anniversary of Operation Northern Cross, the U.S. government officially recognized James Hall's contribution to national security. His name was added to the Book of Memory, a list of individuals whose actions changed history, but who remained in the shadows. "We kept his story hidden for too long," said President Biden in a speech. "But now we know. And we must remember, even the smallest story can change the world."